Hail, and well met, noble adventurers. I trust that your rest was long and, well, restful? Today I have selected a small assortment of writings from a portal you may have heard of called Reddit. I also figured that a dungeon was needed to set the ambiance, for these stories may leave one feeling slimy. The subspell r/rpghorrorstories is full of interesting accounts from adventures gone awry. So, let us call the kobolds to fetch us our drink, and we shall begin our tales. Listen close, for we begin our journey. This story is titled a That Guy scenario. I was part of a Westmarch 5e server years ago that originally started on Kick. At the time, I was brand new to TTRPGs and got into it thanks to Critical Role. Good choice, good choice. Things seemed good at first. We were allowed to roleplay at almost any time, as there were places for out-of-quest stuff. I, unfortunately, have a few horror stories of this Westmarch and people in it, but I will limit this one to someone I will call Mark. For some context on Mark, he was a friend of multiple DMs and admins. I will call them Kane and Joy, in the Westmarch, and was also known to very frequently try to get broken/OP things for his character, as well as not play well with others. Now Mark used to be an admin and a DM, but both privileges were taken from him for another incident. When I joined, I made a ranger, my first ever character in any TTRPG. I was awkward and didn't really know what to do or how to roleplay with people, but I did end up meeting my current significant other through it. Aw, it's cute. My first quest in the server went great. We completed the objective and all got home safely. Problem starts when Mark decided to show up. Mark had a level 8 or 9 ASMR Conquest Paladin that had a homebrew rule to keep some small semblance of their previous Werebear curse. They also had a Gloomstalker Ranger. As it was Westmarch, people were allowed to have multiple characters so they don't have to be locked into a quest all the time. My Ranger, the Warlock, my future significant other, the Furbolg Druid, and the Warlock's, at the time, significant other, who I can't remember their character, we went on a mission to resolve an issue with a group of hill giants attacking merchants on a road. My character had some backstory stuff with the giants, and even knew the language, so she proposed we talk to them to help them relocate. In comes Mark. We were talking about it for around 10 minutes before an arrow comes out of nowhere and hits a giant. Then, more and more as Mark's ranger made themselves known to everyone. 4 of us just stood there, shocked, as a player who never even signed up for the quest or even out of character asked to be part of it, was now doing our quest. We decided to just leave the quest alone and go home. Later, after that, we found out the DM, Kane, who is Mark's friend, secretly did side stuff in a private message to have Mark's ranger secretly follow us and never told anyone about it. You'd think that this is the end, but nope. After a year or so, I tried out being a DM. I liked it, and even though I made some beginner mistakes, everyone seemed excited when I would offer to run quests for people. I got frustrated once the players hadn't been that invested in the RP and seemed to just want to do combat. I tried really hard at making a really compelling line of quests for them to do, and they would all be distracted when their turn would come up. I said as much, and Mark came in and started to blame me for everything. He wasn't even part of the quest. Even before this, he would harass me every chance he got and was never punished for it because 2 of the 3 admins were his friends. This was the point I actually quit playing for 6 months. I eventually cooled down and missed playing the game with my friends, so I came back and would only run quests for people I knew didn't like Mark as well. Eventually, he even tried to file a complaint with the admins that I was giving away EXP to my significant other and my character for next to nothing, just because I wouldn't advertise it for him to know about it. In the end, most of everyone who made that server alive left because of Mark, and it now sits dead in the ether. Not really sure I have a moral for the story, but definitely don't just lie down and take abuse from people like I did. I find that it's really an awful situation when one or more person is friends with somebody who doesn't quite get along with the rest of the people at the table. And for some reason, they favor this person that is a troublemaker. I feel that telling a story with friends at the table should be a cooperative experience, and everybody should be able to take away enjoyment from each session. Now, if there's ever a problem where a player does not take away joy from a session, maybe that was super heavy, or maybe there was some themes that just kind of bothered the player, in that instance, it should always be common courtesy to contact the DM and have a discussion surrounding that situation. And if you have a situation where a conversation was had and the DM seems to not be in agreement with everybody's enjoyment, maybe at that point it's time to begin thinking about finding another group or moving on. And speaking of moving on, let's move on to our next story. This story is called Player Unsatisfied with Ending to Campaign Decides to Nuke Friendship Over It. Hello Reddit, first time posting on this site. I just wanted to tell my story because of a player that left scars on my psyche that it kind of shifted my desire to play D&D specifically for a while. Characters of import. Me, GM/DM. Salisbury, former player 1. And Eurydice, problem player 2. This takes place over my personal Discord playing D&D 5e group that had 2 campaigns going on. One campaign fizzled out due to players getting busy with life, then we had a second game that started as a one-shot but evolved into a full campaign. We had been playing for 1 year plus now, but we decided to take in new players. My ex-girlfriend invited a friend she had from work, which was Salisbury. Salisbury played a wild magic kobold. The character was played to be babyish for the majority of the game, but the character matured up and evolved over the game, eventually becoming one of the key players in the story. Around year 2, and a few story arcs down, a friend I already knew from Facebook decided to chat up the group, seeking refuge from their old D&D group, claiming the previous group had treated them poorly, with targeting her character and fudging the enemies just to target her. This player was Eurydice. They played a Goliath barbarian. The character was a cookie-cutter barbarian with the backstory of basic tribe exile. We played for months and years, and the players were tasked to get their unique magic items, but to fully awaken the weapons, the characters needed to become paragons of the character's virtue. I told the players to please tell me in private how their character would react and what their virtues are so that I could craft story beats and scenes that relate to them, exemplifying their virtue. Most players obliged, except for Eurydice, who didn't give me anything to work with and never communicated properly what her character wanted and their beliefs. So the story went on and we reached the climax. I admit I'm not the best GM when running a story and have a lot of pitfalls. All the characters awakened their weapons, some in a more grandiose style and some not. But Eurydice, their awakening was sudden, as they literally didn't give me anything to work with other than the theme of self-sacrifice. So I shoehorned her character to have a with great power comes great responsibility thing. I would later learn apparently this was the start of their resentment towards me. The story went on and the players took down my BBEG, an ancient white Dracolich, with a mix of magical MacGuffin and some genuinely good combat. I wanted to end the game with a simple, they made it back to where it all began, and grab a pint and fade away. But the players pressured me to do epilogues for them. I did epilogues to the best of my knowledge of the players' characters. For Eurydice and Salisbury originally wanted their character to die, but I later learned they were pressured by Eurydice to change it, that the character reincarnates, but as a child. Eurydice claims their character would take care of the reincarnated Salisbury, so I ran with it, not giving much detail, because, again, I was not talked to about their character. It left a bad taste in my mouth. So, after we closed off for the night, I tried to tell the players I rushed the ending and wanted them to figure out their own epilogues, because I could not do their characters justice. All was quiet for a while, then Iridice made a scathing post on social media claiming I was targeting them, and I intentionally didn't give her character equal limelight like I did for the others, when again, they always played their character in a very reactionary way, and never communicated with me how they wanted their story to end. They said me trying to change it post-ending that they could create their own epilogues was a lazy handwave. A few weeks go by and I was suddenly blocked by Salisbury. Later, found out by my ex that Salisbury and Uridice had an argument about how the story of the campaign ended, so they were presented with an ultimatum. It was either Uridice or me by Uridice. They chose Uridice, and now treat me in the Discord server like I don't exist. Both players are still in my Discord server, but I don't speak to them unless spoken to, and they treat me as ghosts, so I do the same. End of story. Apologies for the formatting, because this is my first time posting, and it is a little hard to recount slights and resentments that go back years ago. Overall, the conflict is minor, and I just wanted to let my feelings out on this so the pain does not fester. Granted, it is hard not to resent when someone is trying to isolate you from your friend group and paint you to be an ungodly monster. Oof. Yeah, I have had my fair share of people going back on trust. Especially when it comes to social situations, there were some sides picked in some instances. But I always find that it's better to move on with those who are there for you. And I know that that's easier said than done, especially when you do have someone pumping poison into the ears of those who are around them. But what do I know? I'm just a simple dragon merchant, hiding away in her hoard of magical trinkets. So, without further ado, let's move to our final story for the day. This final one for the day is titled Horror Story I Witnessed Between a Tactless DM and an Oversensitive Player. Have you ever wondered what it was like to witness an RPG horror experience in person? Well, I did almost a year ago, and I'm here to recollect on it. It occurred at another table, so some details are missing. To explain this properly, it's probably best to share some context. I play almost exclusively at a local game store, since my computers for some reason hate Roll20. Barely works with D&D Beyond. And for in-person fixes, no one else in my family plays D&D or other TTRPGs. To my chagrin, I'm something of a forever DM, rarely getting to play outside of rare one-shots, and have yet to enjoy a long-form campaign to its intended end. However, we did, at the time, have a second DM, Mickey, not his real name, who was a cool and chill guy, but was also something of a problem DM. And my attempts to play under him did not go well, and only kept giving him chances because I was that desperate to be a player instead of a forever DM, letting me learn the hard way, no D&D is better than bad D&D. My own issues with Mickey are not the focus of this particular story, only his lack of tact at this particular game. And if it matters, I did ask for Mickey's permission to post the story. At my table, my party of 6 had just become a party of 7, as my rogue player, oldest player at the table, 47, asked me of his son, playing a barbarian, could join the table after he had fun at a beginner one-shot. At first, I was reluctant, given I had hard enough time with 6 players, and I was tempted to ask him to attend a second table ran by Mickey, but agreed to let him at least play as a guest PC, so he could play with his dad and I could see how he does. Needless to say, I'm very glad I didn't put Rogue's son at the table with Hexblade or Mickey. Not just because of how nasty a mess it was to imagine our newbie having to deal with what was about to unfold, but also the fact that he proved to be a hilarious player and quickly got used to role-playing. His Goliath barbarian following the lovable idiot trope, a classic combination for a good reason. So back on the day this occurred, table number 2 was basically ladies' night, as by coincidence, Mickey had a party of only female players, 4 of them total. One was his friend, Druid, 2 more friends of his, Fighter and Barbarian, and 1 more girl no one knew, Hexblade. It was shaping up to be an interesting experience for Mickey, and the biggest influx of female players we ever had for a D&D night. Alas, Hexblade proved to be something of a problem, however pretty quickly. Thing about Mickey is that he's not a bad DM in a malicious way, but he's very lazy, often refusing to prep sessions and 100% improv them, which is a shame given the few times he did take time to prep his sessions are really nice. Pro tip with DMing, one cannot just rely on pre-written things and improve alone, but must find a happy balance. He also very much hardly helped his players if they had questions, which I always found off-putting. Even worse, he would rather go outside the store and take 10 minutes to vape instead of assist his very inexperienced players in filling out their character sheets, which I find entirely inexcusable. Fortunately, if I'm asked, and I was, I usually am willing to offer my own assistance during his absences, so long as my own prep is finished first. After I help Fighter, who was playing for the first time, get the basics done and give a minor attack tutorial at her request, Hexblade says she herself is new. I thought she meant new to the game. And she got irritable when I offered to assist her and break things down. She loudly clarified, "No, I mean I'm new to this place." As she did not like that I had simply assumed the meaning of her admittedly unclear choice of words, instead of, calmly declining with a simple thanks but no thanks. Thing is, I didn't even force my assistance, only verbally offered, and she still flipped out as if she expected me to read her mind. Hexblade did, however, clarify that she has a cognitive disorder, which I find understandable and could tell she was being genuine about it, having high-functioning ASD myself. But it was clear, quickly, that this girl was either used to getting her own way all the time or not used to having to compromise with other people very often. In addition to the rude outburst I mentioned previously, this is evident by the fact I made a joke regarding why I'm helping everyone even though it wasn't my table, once Mickey returns. I don't recall the exact words I used, but the punchline involved Mickey being a bit of a moron. Hexblade got offended at this even though the joke was not directed at her in any way, as in her mind, it's not okay to joke about intelligence at all. Now, at the time, I was apologetic, understood why it might have upset her, and I didn't want to offend someone I had just met. I do believe Hexblade genuinely overreacted. I didn't point the joke to her, nor did I belittle her at all, and how my friends and I interact with each other is not anyone else's business but our own. Thus, as you can imagine, I got annoyed with Hexblade quickly and noped out since Mickey started to resume setting his table while I go finish prepping my own. I silently hoped for the best with Mickey's excessively passive DMing style and Hexblade's constant nitpicking about every little slight while clearly a bit nervous herself. However, even while running my own session in which the party met the new barbarian hanging on a rope in a temple by the ankles and waving to the party while saying "hi" with a moronic tone, I had noticed Hexblade was a problem that Mickey was struggling to handle. To begin with, I noticed that Table 2 was not playing about 30 minutes after the starting time, because Hexblade was taking too long with her sheet, having refused any help. Likewise, despite being so insistent on a Hexblade, she had Mickey ask me on her behalf while I was running my session if Hexblades use Charisma as their primary stat. Since I myself play a Hexblade in Mickey's games, I get why he asked me instead of Googling it. But at the same time, shouldn't Hexblade know the primary stat of her predetermined class, if nothing else, especially considering her refusal to be assisted otherwise? Alas, Mickey, as I stressed, is a really lazy DM, relying on me to guide him a bit too much at times. On the inside, I was facepalming, but answered quickly that yes, it was Charisma. All of this while trying to focus on and run my own game of 7 players, who were fighting against elementals, and the ranger got to avenge his previous PC from a different campaign. Mickey, honestly, really is doing his best, and he's gotten better with presenting his homebrew world set in a light-hearted, grimdark setting, which he somehow made possible. But I could still overhear Hexblade being confused, interrupting, and asking if there were any homebrew mechanics instead of letting her DM speak. Mickey is not the best at getting his point across, so this occasion, Hexblade's complaint was understandable, but still not the best way to respond. Mickey overuses the term homebrew, mostly as to say it's his own setting, which is valid, but is usually vague of what the setting entails, and with admittedly not many differences in his house rules and concepts compared to the rules as written, aside from dragons having different breath weapons, the presence of goblins/elf hybrids, and allowing one to have more than one inspiration at a time. Honestly, it would have helped if he'd name his locations, settings, and NPCs instead of being lazy with his prep and world building, which doubtlessly fed Hexblade's frustration in trying to understand what she's getting into. In due time, about an hour before it's time for my session with my own party to end, I noticed that Table 2 disbanded early in spite of their late start. I don't actually know what occurred as a whole, aside from Hexblade being rowdy enough to catch the attention of some of my players now and then when she ended leaving early. Before she left, Hex apologized to her party and also to me both directly and indirectly for the rocky introductions on her way out, which I greatly appreciated, as to me, a willingness to say sorry instead of playing the victim says a lot about people. The other players left later on, but still earlier than planned, as they had work but did confide that they enjoyed the session a lot more once Hexblade was no longer present. At least I hope that's the case, and that Hexblade didn't ruin their fun and discourage them from returning, but sadly, never saw any of those players again. Like I said, Hexblade is not a bad person, just problematic, and admittedly a bit of a snowflake who needs to understand everyone, not just herself, has autonomy. Mickey did, however, offer her a spot on the Thursday game, which I play in once in a while, to give her a second chance. Honestly, I had a bit of dread hearing that, and even Mickey admitted once Hexblade left he is quietly hoping she won't be able to make it that day despite inviting her since he wanted to be amicable. According to Mickey, the straw that broke the camel's back was Hexblade insisting everyone be quiet while it was her turn in a far than less polite manner. Not like to lower their voices either, but apparently be entirely pin drop silent, which is an unrealistic expectation even without considering my own table was playing too. This aggressive fussiness was causing stress to one of the other girls, Druid, who happened to be pregnant at the time, and Hexblade became remorseful for her behavior on top of being overstimulated from everyone being loud. Which is ironic, given she mentions she can't hear well and asked for Mickey to speak up more than once. This is not something I will shame Hexblade for, as I suffer this paradox sometimes too. Mickey tried to assure he could still hear her just fine, and not to worry, but Hexblade wasn't having it. It was at this Mickey put his foot down and politely suggested Hexblade ask for a refund from the store owner, as this wasn't the game for her. This is the only time I ever saw Mickey turn someone away, as he was usually pretty desperate for a high number of players since he had really bad player turnout most of the time. Thursday came and went. Hexblade did not arrive. According to the store owner, he had actually called Hexblade's mom to inform her, for Hexblade's own safety, that she should probably have supervision next time she is present in the game store, in the event of another meltdown or sensory overload. Either Hexblade's mom could not spare the time to be there for a few hours, or Hexblade had other things going on, if not deciding on her own not to return, as a year later I still have yet to see her again. Hexblade, if you find this post somehow on Reddit or being narrated by someone on YouTube, hey! I wish you well on finding a suitable game, and thank you Mickey for giving me permission to post his tale. I hope it entertains everyone and eases your horror. And for those curious, the rogue's son remained part of the group for a good while. His impressive roleplay and dedication to the character he was playing more than earning him a spot on my table beyond simply a guest appearance, only leaving due to classes starting up. I miss playing with both of them. They were fun as a pair who played off of each other well. TLDR, a passive and lazy DM and a sensitive player prove incompatible to the point this clash catches the attention of my table at times. Things end peacefully, at least. Well, I'm glad that one at least had a peaceful resolution. A lot of times these things can get pretty toxic, just depending on the player who's at the table and how much they enforce their will upon the others playing. So, that concludes our time for today. Adventurers, please take your long rests, replenish your abilities. Please feel free to find me at any of my other lairs where I can sell you magic items or simply play games and hang out, I guess. And hopefully I can get some art uploaded to some of my other playlists. I'm curious as to what everybody is playing. I have been playing D&D for it's been about 12 years total. So I've had many, many, many characters, and each one of them has been so incredibly different. There are a few that really stand out and that I cannot wait to share their stories with you guys. I love kind of getting involved in these kinds of things, and yeah, I love TTRPGs and I love nerdy stuff, and I'm very, very glad to be able to upload this as my first video. I have pretty much every social media, so feel free to find me over there, and I look forward to the next video, reading Reddit stories. Please like and subscribe and share to your friends who enjoy listening to Reddit stories just kind of in the background. I know I do. I kind of put them on and just listen to whatever while I'm doing whatever. Mostly dishes. I hate doing that. And I'll just kind of have something on in the background to kind of just drone out and listen to. But until next time, may your wings sail upon pleasant winds. Until we meet again.